Hello everyone, I am the Meta Kirby, and welcome to my channel, The Commander Tavern. The Commander Tavern is a channel dedicated to my favorite Magic the Gathering format. The Brewery is a series on this channel showcasing my spicy brews and other deck techs. On this episode of The Brewery, I'll be discussing my take on a Commander background pairing from Baldur's Gate, Halsin Inspiring Leader. If you like this deck or any of the cards I'll be mentioning throughout the video, please consider using my TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing those cards. You can find that link down in the description. It'll really help out the channel. The best way you can help support the channel is with my Patreon. For just $1, patrons get early access to certain videos on YouTube. In fact, patrons got a chance to see this video earlier. You can also support my channel for free by simply liking, subscribing, and sharing, which also helps out a lot. I put out a video every Monday, so you don't want to miss out. You can join my Discord server for free if you want to join the Commander Tavern community. All pertinent links are down in the description. Alright, let's get back to the episode. Halsin is a 2/4 elf druid with choose a background for 3 generic and 1 green. For just 1 generic, you can turn a token you control into a 4/4 green bear in addition to its other colors and types. You heard that right, it doesn't specify creature tokens. So you can turn clues, treasures, food, etc. into 4/4 bears. Now, while that's an amazing notion, that's not really the direction I took with this deck. That being said, I chose Inspiring Leader as Halsin's background regardless because it's going to pump those tokens +2/+2, effectively making them into 6/6 bears for just 1 generic mana. While the deck's not turning non-creature tokens into 4/4 bears yet, it could have guessed from the thumbnail that I'm turning living weapons into Avengers level threats. While there aren't many, I did include as many as I felt would make a difference. Those being Batterbone, Batterskull, Flare Husk, Cauldron Complete, Necropouncer, Nuddlecyst, Scytheclaw, Sickle Slicer, Skinwing, and Standwalker. While some of these are obviously better than others, keep in mind that we want to play on curve as well as wanting powerful equipment. Of course, the best of these are Batterskull, Nuddlecyst, and Cauldron Complete. There's no question. But depending on the situation, these are all strong when you consider getting a 2/2 for free if we have our background. That will be buffed by the equipment and then potentially becoming a 6/6 when Halsin turns them into a 4/4. However, as always, it would be folly to rely solely on our commander and background in this case. That's why the deck is running Harmonious Archon and Divine Visitation as redundancy for Halsin. Best of these are the static effects, which has a slight upside when compared to Halsin. The Phyrexian Germs aren't Archons, so they'll be 3/3s for free, which is super busted. As a bonus, the Archon also pops out 2 1/1s that are really 3/3s. Divine Visitation does something similar, but better, because it simply changes the creature tokens we create into 4/4 angels with flying and vigilance. And yes, I already know the question you're going to ask. But Kirby, what happens with Living Weapon? Well, I already asked in a judge's forum and I got good news for you. While the 0/0 Phyrexian Germ is instead a 4/4 angel, the equipment still gets attached to it. So Divine Visitation is incredibly busted with Living Weapons. As for redundancy for Inspiring Leader, the deck's running Intangible Virtue and Mirai's Wake. These aren't the only boons in the deck either, it's also got Coat of Arms and Gavity Township. The benefit of the first two is that the boon is static and inconsequential, so if the Germ were to have the equipment unattached, it's not a 0/0. Coat of Arms requires at least 1 more Phyrexian Germ to be on the battlefield. Gavity Township, while putting +1/+1 counters on all of our creatures at instant speed, isn't fast enough to prevent 0/0 Germs from being sacrificed as a state-based action. That being said, activating Gavity Township whenever we have the mana is great and it doesn't take up a slot on the deck. Mirai's Wake also has the added bonus of our lands tapping for an additional mana, which is amazing, but we'll see the rest of the deck's mana acceleration soon. Intangible Virtue giving Vigilance is a great boon. Coat of Arms is still the most busted one here, not just because of the germs, but the other tokens we can make en masse, but we'll see those in a bit. Amara Tandris and Crashing Drawbridge are some more boons in the deck, albeit neither are redundancy for our combo in the command zone. That being said, giving our creatures indestructible is super clutch considering that board wipes are one of the worst things to happen to token decks. Giving our creatures haste at instant speed is amazing as well. The fact that the drawbridge is an artifact is a huge plus, which we'll soon see why. Seedborn Muse is the final card I want to talk about here because in a sense it gives pseudo-vigilance. Its power is obviously very apparent though, considering that we can untap all of our attackers to block with as well as our lands and mana rocks in order to keep paying for Halsin's ability during our opponent's turns. Very rarely will opponents look our way until they can attempt to do something about our board. Speaking of our board, 11 equipment with Living Weapon does not a token deck make, at least not to me. The deck still has other spells and effects to make the most of the combination in the command zone. Thanks to Grand Crescendo, March of the Multitudes, Secure the Race, White Sun Zenith, and Cycling Decree of Justice, we can make X creature tokens at instant speed. These can really help us bounce back from a board wipe or simply empty a ton of mana into at the beginning of the end step before ours. Speaking of board wipes, Grand Crescendo gives all of our creatures indestructible, which is a huge bonus, especially since we can cast it for X = 0 in a pinch. Obviously, similar non-synergistic effects like Heroic Intervention, Flawless Maneuver, Teferi's Protection, and Rapid Vigor are also included. As I mentioned earlier, we want to avoid having to bounce back from a board wipe as much as possible. So what better way than to prevent them altogether? Going back to amassing tons of weenie tokens, Scepter of Celebration fits the bill. With this equipped onto a big enough creature, and we can accumulate a ton of tokens in no time, especially since it also gives +2/+0 and Trample. Such an amazing card. We can also make tokens little by little instead of all at once, thanks to Castle Ardenvale, Jeldarin Outpost, Vitu-Ghazi the City Tree, Springjack Pasture, Gingerbread Cabin, Colony Garden, and Legion's Landing. The first 4 require paying and tapping to create a single token, which is quite expensive on their own. But with our background, we're making something way bigger for that cost. The last 3 make the token only when they enter the battlefield, but at least Legion's Landing can transform into Adanto the First Fort, which is then a land like the first 4. While Legion's Landing only costs 1 white to cast, I would not consider it a free slot like the other lands are because they are still actually lands and thus actually don't take up slots in the deck. One with the Kami is another amazing token creating effect, even though it's not really under our control. That being said, it's an amazing aura in this deck since all of the Phyrexian germs created via Living Weapon are going to automatically be modified creatures. So when any of them die, they'll trigger this aura, giving us a ton more weenie tokens. Same goes with any creature that has a +1/+1 counter, so this aura also pairs amazingly with Gavin Township. In fact, once this aura is on the battlefield, opponents might not even attempt to wipe the board since we will get a ton of 1/1s when they do, potentially being the only player with a board afterwards. Speaking of tokens, you know I can't go without mentioning Doubling Season, Primal Vigor, Parallel Lives, and Anointed Procession. Yes, these cards are unreasonably expensive, but they are amazing in this deck. That being said, while the first 2 are even better since they can also double the +1/+1 counters that can be placed on our creatures, the fact remains that you don't really need them for the deck to function. But again, super busted here. Keep in mind that without static pumps, any germ that gets doubled will be sacrificed due to state-based actions because the equipment can only be attached to 1 of the tokens it creates. Same with Risk to Redeem and Second Harvest, which are actually reasonably priced token doubling effects for the deck. There should be no reason not to run them in this deck. Risk can not only make a 1/1 for 3 mana and tapping, but double our creature tokens for 6 in tapping. Second Harvest is even better since it could also double our non-creature tokens. While the deck doesn't create many of those, it is running Bloodforged Battle Axe, which is absolutely busted here along with Mirrorworks. I love these 2 cards, especially in a deck like this one. If you're able to hit an opponent with a creature equipped with an axe, and you can create a token copy of it. Not only can this pump your army if you have the mana, but you can potentially create exponentially many copies of them, which helps for those modified triggers in the deck. Mirrorworks is absolutely crazy. We can use this to copy our mana rocks, cost reducers, or, you guessed it, our equipments with Living Weapon. This does work as you'd expect. If you pay the 2, when the Living Weapon enters the battlefield, the copy will also create a Phyrexian Germ to be attached to, so you're getting double the weapons for just 2 generic mana. I love it. Illusionist Bracers is another doubling effect in the deck and a quite powerful one at that. Even if you just equip it to Halsin, you can turn 2 tokens into 4/4 bears for just 1 mana. But equip to a creature like Risk, and you can quadruple your creature tokens for just 6 mana and tapping. Quadruple. Now, as for those other artifacts I mentioned copying with Mirrorworks, the Living Weapon artifacts are definitely the most important ones. But the deck does take advantage of being artifact heavy by including mana rocks as well as cost reducers for artifacts. Cloud Key, Foundry Inspector, Starnheim Courser, and Jorah's Familiar are such reducers. You do need to choose Artifact for Cloud Key, but you could technically choose the other options if you want. Don't. Jorah's Familiar is even better because it can also reduce the cost of our legendary spells. Besides Starnheim Courser, these are amazing to copy if we're able to, since we can reduce the cost of over 25% of the deck. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and Talisman of Unity, the mana rocks of the deck, can also benefit from it. Since we're reducing the cost of artifacts, these have the potential of costing 1 or less or being free altogether, which is nothing to scoff at. So they're useful early game or late game. Naturally, the deck is still running land-based ramp thanks to being green. So Farseek, Nature's Lore, 3 Visits, Rampant Growth, and Into the North are a given. All the deck's basic lands are snow-covered in order to be able to include Into the North, which is a 2-costed land-based ramp spell. So if you can do that, do it. That being said, these aren't as powerful mana acceleration effects as something like Kodama of the West tree. Again, recall that Living Weapon is such an amazing mechanic for the modified mechanic. It's almost like peanut butter and jelly. Not only does Kodama give all of our Phyrexian germs trample, but whenever they deal combat damage to a player, we ramp for a basic land. It's essentially giving our equipped creatures a Sword of the Animus or Sword of Hearth and Home effect for free. In fact, these 2 equipment are also in the deck. While Sword of the Animus is better since it triggers on attack and not combat, Sword of Hearth and Home can have us blink a creature if we wanted to. But in this deck, it's here mostly for the repeatable land-based mana acceleration in aggressive artifact form. Besides the obvious advantages this deck has for mana acceleration, it also has plenty of advantages for card draw. You know how it is with the do-all color that is green. The deck's running Camaraderie, Collective Unconscious, Shamanic Revelation, and Mouth to Feed, which are explosive ways of drawing into a ton of cards. Granted, it's not the Mouth spell that draws us cards, but at least it creates a 3/3 token for us, which is still synergistic. However, we're realistically only caring about the Feed spell to cast from our graveyard. Feed cares about the power of our creatures, but hopefully we have our background out when it resolves. Same with Shamanic Revelation, which could then give us a ton of life. SRAM Senior Artificer and Pure Steel Paladin can also draw us cards. Granted, not as explosively as the previous ones, but that's because these are white and the others were green. Snide remarks aside, they do provide incremental advantage since we don't have to pay mana for their triggers. Best of all, the Paladin allows us to equip equipment for free. This is amazing for if we can't go wide but have to instead go tall. Just equip all of those equipment to Halsin and swing in for a commander damage win out of nowhere. Stonehaven Outfitter is some more card draw that's synergistic with the equipment aspect of the deck. In this case, it's when the equipped creature dies. That's not so bad since it's also a type of way to recover from a board wipe if we had a lot of equipped creatures. As a bonus, it also gives equipped creatures +1/+1, which our Phyrexian Germs won't mind at all. Speaking of board wipes, Hour of Reckoning is included for good measure. Believe it or not, this card ends games. While we don't want the whole board to be wiped, we're not that set back if our tokens were to remain. In fact, Pillow Fort effects are even more annoying, so Generous Gift and Beast Within are included to deal with them. However, as previously mentioned, if we do have to face off against Pillow Fort effects, the deck can either go wide or tall depending on the situation. But hopefully we can draw into our interaction when needed. Speaking of, Thought Vessel and Reliquary Tower are included because the deck can draw into a ton of cards, especially with the explosive spells mentioned earlier. Best of all, these cards don't really take up a slot on the deck, especially the tower since it's a mana generating land that doesn't enter the battlefield tapped. Speaking of lands, the rest of the deck is just the rest of the lands. The deck's running all 7 fetch lands, Temple Garden, Canopy Vista, Arctic Tree Line, Scattered Groves, Command Tower, and Ancient Tomb, as well as 6 of each basic snow land. Recall that we're ramping so hard for basic lands, and they might as well be snow covered to be able to include Into the North as a 2-costed ramp spell. As with all of my deck techs, you can build your mana base according to your budget. Whether you include more expensive cards or even cheaper cards is up to you. You do you. This brew is just an idea of how to build around Halsin Emerald Archdruid. While you can definitely pair him with absolutely any background you want, this one seems to be the best one so far and quite popular, so you can definitely find even more ideas out there for it. That being said, I wanted to do something interesting and a bit off the beaten path. Playing with Living Weapon not only gives the potential of a go-wide beatdown, but also a decent Voltron strategy for a Plan B victory. If you're interested in the deck list of this spicy brew of mine, you can find a link to it down in the description. I would like to thank all my patrons for supporting me, and a quick shout out to all my higher tier patrons, the Brewers, for their patronage. I'd also like to thank anyone using my TCG Player affiliate link, that also helps out the channel. And to everyone, thanks for watching this episode of The Brewery on the Commander Tavern. I'm the Meditor Kirby, and happy brewing.